Back in late 2014, rumors were that AMD was going to release the R9 285 and the R9 285X. These two Tonga-based GPUs would have served as the refreshes of the R9 280 and the R9 280X, which themselves were rebrands of the legendary 7950 and the 7970 GHz editions. The Tonga cards, however, were based on AMD's new GCN 1.2 architecture rather than the previous Tahiti-based GCN 1.0. The Tonga refresh would have brought with them features such as bridgeless crossfire, FreeSync support, better power efficiency, true audio, hardware decoder, and many more. However, while the R9 285 was released in September of 2014, the R9 285X never was. Rumors went from it being cancelled, then to it having never existed in the first place. Regardless, a year later, a Tonga-based successor of the R9 280X was released in the name of the 380X, and the 285X was all but forgotten. Today I have here an engineering sample of the R9 285X. It is an AMD reference card with two 90mm fans that look very similar to that can be found on the 7990. It's approximately 27cm in length and it is a 2-slot card. For I/O, it has two dual-link DVIs, an HDMI, and a DisplayPort, same as the R9 285. For power, it requires an 8-pin and a 6-pin, although its TDP is only 200 watts. This card runs at a base clock of 1002 MHz on the GPU core and 1350 MHz on the memory, although I was able to overclock this manually to 1100 MHz on the core, approximately 10%. Anything higher results in artifacting. To show that this is indeed an R9 285X and not something else, the GPU's Z validated screenshot here shows that it is a Tonga-based architecture and it has 2048 shader units with 3GB of GDDR5 on a 384-bit bus, all of which match up very closely to the rumor specs of the R9 285. Additionally, the only other Tonga cards that were ever released was the R9 285, the 380X, and the 380, all of which have either 2 or 4GB of GDDR5 on a 256-bit bus, further supporting that this is indeed an R9 285X. Interestingly, although in its GPU-Z this card was unable to be identified and was only recognized as an R9 200 series, when I did a lookup manually, it did bring me to the page for the R9 285X. Of course, I know most of you want to see how this card performs in today's games, especially in AAA titles, so without further ado, here are the benchmarks. As you can see, the R9 fared exceptionally well for an almost 3-year-old card. In fact, it was even a mid-range card at the time. Its biggest limitation, however, was its meager 3GB of VRAM. While 3GB was enough, or perhaps more than enough, during the era of the 7970 and 280X, it is much less so in today's AAA titles. In many of the games I tested, I did notice that the 285X reached its maximum VRAM a lot of the time, and yes, I did check manually in-game with MSI Afterburner. The VRAM usage was constantly pegged near 3GB. In fact, I had to override the memory limits in games such as Hitman to even run the benchmarks in the first place. Yet, funnily enough, despite the VRAM constraints, the 285X ran Hitman surprisingly well and was able to achieve an average of 60 FPS in a 2016 AAA title at max settings, which is very impressive. One thing I found to be interesting is that the 285X, unlike newer AMD cards, did not see as big of an improvement when going from DirectX 11 to DirectX 12. For example, in Ashes of the Singularity, it only saw a 3 FPS increase, whereas the 390X saw a 12 FPS increase. I would have liked to see the results for Vulkan versus OpenGL, but technical issues resulted in me unable to get the Vulkan results in Doom, and that's why you didn't see those results earlier. As for thermals, this card actually ran exceptionally cool and quite under load. The max temperature did reach about 70 degrees Celsius, but that was with the default fan profile, which meant that the fans were actually hovering around the minimum speed of 30% and never exceeded 40% even at max load. Overall, I am quite impressed with the performance of this card, keeping in mind that this would have been a mid-range card when it was supposed to be released almost 3 years ago. I suspect the reason why this card was never released in the first place was that it was too close to the 290 in terms of performance, and the 290 was just released a couple of months ago. Nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed this look at the R9 a card that was never officially released by AMD. If you have any ideas for any additional benchmarks you want to see or any kind of tests you want to see on this card, please let me know in the comment section below. I still have the card lying around so I can easily pop it back in my test bench and run some more tests. That being said, that's about it for this video. If you liked it, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for future uploads. As always, thanks for watching and have a great day.